Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and looked at his work schedule one more time. The glowing text on his wrist device showed Bay 47 Alpha. He had been working on this massive space station for 5 years now, fixing things that broke, replacing old parts, and keeping the systems running. It was not exciting work, but it paid well enough. Most importantly, it got him off Earth and into the stars. Caraxes 7 was huge. The station floated in space like a small metal moon, with thousands of ships coming and going every day. Aliens from hundreds of different worlds walked through its corridors. Some were tall and thin with too many arms. Others were short and covered in fur or scales. Jake had seen so many different types of beings that nothing surprised him anymore. He grabbed his tool bag and headed toward the docking area. The corridors were crowded as always. Alien merchants argued in languages that his translator chip could barely understand. Security drones floated past, their red lights scanning everyone. Jake kept his head down and walked faster. Being human meant being ignored most of the time, and he preferred it that way. The station was run by something called the Temporal Administrator. Nobody really knew what it was or where it came from. The aliens said it was an artificial intelligence built by an ancient species that died out long ago. It controlled everything on the station, from the air people breathed to the doors they walked through. Jake had never seen it or talked to it directly. The AI just sent work orders through his chip and he followed them. When he reached the docking area, Jake stopped and checked his wrist device again. Bay 47 Alpha should be in the commercial sector, where cargo ships loaded and unloaded their goods. He looked around at the bay numbers painted on the walls. Something felt wrong. These numbers were in the 70s, not the 40s. Jake frowned and looked at his device once more. The text clearly said Bay 47 Alpha, but according to the signs around him, he was standing near Bay 74 Alpha. He scratched his head. Maybe he had walked to the wrong section, or maybe the AI had made a mistake with the bay number. He decided to check Bay 74 Alpha anyway. If it was empty, he would go find the right bay. If there was work to do, well, a broken ship was a broken ship. He walked up to the heavy metal doors and waved his hand over the access panel. To his surprise, the doors opened immediately. Usually he needed special authorization to enter the restricted sectors, but the system let him through without any questions. The bay was dark inside. The lights flickered on slowly as he entered, revealing a sight that made him stop in his tracks. A ship sat in the center of the bay, but it was unlike any ship he had ever seen. Most ships Jake worked on were practical and ugly, built for carrying cargo or people from one place to another. This ship was beautiful. The hull was smooth and curved, with lines that seemed to flow like water. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its surface, pulsing with a soft light. The metal looked old but well-preserved, as if time had touched it gently. Jake walked closer, his boots echoing on the metal floor. His scanner beeped and he looked down at the readings. The ship belonged to the Celestial Dynasty. Jake let out a low whistle. The Celestial Dynasty was one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. Their people rarely left their home worlds, and their ships were treated like sacred objects. What was one of their vessels doing in a quarantine bay locked away and forgotten? His scanner showed more information. The ship had been here for over 200 years. It was classified as a lost relic with no life signs, just an empty shell waiting to be studied or scrapped. Jake walked around it slowly, admiring the craftsmanship. Even after 2 centuries, the ship looked perfect. Then he heard it, a sound so faint that he almost missed it, a voice weak and distant calling for help. Jake froze. His scanner said there were no life signs. The ship had been sealed for 200 years. There should not be anyone inside. But he heard the voice again, clearer this time. Someone was in there. Every logical part of Jake's brain told him to leave. Call security. Report the situation. Let the proper authorities handle it. But something else, something deeply human, made him move toward the ship instead. Someone was in trouble. Someone needed help. He could not just walk away. He approached the main hatch and examined it. The locking mechanism was old and complex, using technology he had only read about in technical manuals. The Celestial Dynasty built their locks to last forever, with encryption that would take years to crack. But Jake had learned something during his time on the station. Alien technology might be advanced, but it was not always practical. He pulled out his multi-tool and opened a side panel near the hatch. Inside were power conduits and data cables, all connected in elaborate patterns. Jake traced the connections with his eyes, following the logic of the system. Then he did something that would have horrified any proper engineer. He took 2 of the power cables and crossed them, sending electricity through circuits that were never meant to be connected. Sparks flew. The lights on the hatch flickered and changed color. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of ancient hydraulics, the hatch began to open. Jake stepped back as stale air rushed out from inside. The smell was strange, like flowers and metal mixed together. He waited for the air to clear, then climbed through the opening. Inside, the ship was even more impressive. The walls were covered with intricate designs that seemed to shift and move in the dim light. Precious metals decorated every surface. This was not just a ship. It was a palace that could fly through space. Jake moved carefully through the corridors, following the sound of the voice. He found the central chamber and stopped. In the middle of the room stood a large pod, made of crystal or glass that glowed from within. Inside the pod was a person, a woman. She looked human at first glance, but small differences marked her as alien. Her skin had a faint shimmer like oil on water. Her hair seemed to float even though there was no wind. Strange patterns, almost like tattoos made of light, decorated her temples. She was in stasis, frozen in time. But the pod was failing. Jake could see it in the flickering lights and hear it in the grinding sounds coming from the machinery. The systems keeping her alive were breaking down after 200 years. If he did nothing, she would die soon. Maybe in hours, maybe in days, but the end was coming. Jake looked at his wrist device. He should call someone. This was way above his pay grade. But by the time proper authorities arrived, asked their questions, and filled out their forms, it might be too late. He made a decision. He set down his tool bag and started examining the pod's systems. The technology was incredible. The pod used quantum fields to slow down time inside, keeping the occupant in a state between life and death. The power source was a small sphere of compressed energy that should have lasted forever. But nothing lasts forever. The sphere was dying, its light growing dim. Jake needed to give it more power or find a way to wake the woman up before the whole system failed. He pulled cables from his tool bag and connected them to the pod. Then he linked his portable generator to the system, sending fresh power into the ancient machinery. The lights grew brighter. The grinding sound stopped. But the pod was still failing. It needed more than just power. It needed to complete its cycle and release the occupant. Jake found what looked like a control panel on the side of the pod. The symbols were in a language he could not read, but the layout made sense. Every control system had similar patterns. Power buttons were usually at the top. Emergency releases were marked in red. He found what he hoped was the revival sequence and pressed it. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the pod began to hum. The crystal walls turned opaque, hiding the woman from view. Lights flashed in complex patterns. The ship's systems came to life, responding to the pod's commands. Jake stepped back and waited, his heart pounding. The process took nearly an hour. Jake sat on the floor and watched the pod work, occasionally checking his tool connections to make sure everything stayed stable. He wondered who the woman was. A diplomat? A scientist? Someone important enough to travel in a ship this fancy. Someone important enough that people tried to kill her. Finally, the pod's walls became clear again. The woman's eyes opened. They were purple, a deep violet that seemed to glow in the dim light. She looked around in confusion, taking in her surroundings. Then her eyes found Jake, and she tensed. For a moment, they just stared at each other. An alien princess and a human mechanic, meeting across 200 years. The pod opened with a soft click. The woman tried to step out, but her legs gave way immediately. Jake rushed forward and caught her before she hit the floor. She was light, much lighter than a human her size should be. Her skin was warm and had a strange texture, like silk over stone. She said something in a language his translator could not understand. Old Celestial, probably. Jake helped her sit down and pointed to his ear, tapping the translator chip embedded there. She nodded and touched her own temple. Her chip must have needed a moment to activate after such a long sleep. She spoke again, and this time the words came through clearly. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice was weak but carried authority. This was someone used to being obeyed. "Jake Morrison. I am a maintenance technician on this station. I heard you calling for help." Jake pulled the maintenance hatch open and helped Lyra climb through. She moved slowly, her muscles weak after 200 years in stasis. Behind them, the sounds of security boots echoed through the bay. The Krillian guards were inside now, searching the ancient ship. Jake and Lyra had maybe 30 seconds before someone spotted the open hatch. The maintenance tunnel was narrow and dark. Pipes ran along the walls, carrying water and waste and air to different parts of the station. Most aliens never came down here. They considered this kind of work beneath them, something for lesser species to handle. Jake had spent years learning these passages, fixing leaks and replacing old equipment. Now that knowledge might save their lives. He closed the hatch behind them and sealed it with his multi-tool, fusing the locking mechanism. It would not stop security for long, but it might buy them a few minutes. He pulled out a small flashlight and turned it on, then started moving deeper into the tunnels. Lyra followed close behind, one hand on his shoulder to keep her balance. They walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Jake led them through twists and turns, up ladders and down steep ramps. Twice they had to crawl through spaces so tight that Jake had to push his tool bag ahead of him. Lyra never complained. She just kept moving, even though he could hear her breathing hard behind him. Finally, they reached an old storage room that Jake knew about. It had been abandoned years ago when the station expanded and new storage facilities were built. The door was rusted shut, but Jake kicked it open. Inside were stacks of forgotten equipment covered in dust. A few old light panels still worked, casting a dim yellow glow over everything. Lyra sat down on a crate and put her head in her hands. Her shimmer was fading, Jake noticed. Her skin looked duller, less vibrant. He remembered reading something about celestial dynasty physiology. They needed certain minerals that their bodies could not produce naturally. After 200 years without proper nutrition, Lyra must be running on empty. "Are you okay?" he asked. She looked up at him. "I am alive. That is more than I expected when I felt the stasis pod failing. Thank you for saving me, Jake Morrison. I will not forget this debt." "We are not safe yet," Jake said. He pulled out his wrist device and checked the security alerts. The entire station was on lockdown. His picture was displayed on every screen, labeled as a thief and possible saboteur. No mention of Lyra at all. That confirmed what she had said earlier. Someone knew she was alive and wanted to keep it quiet. "They are calling me a criminal," he said, showing her the screen. "Saying I stole valuable artifacts from a historical ship." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "They are covering up my existence, which means the conspiracy that tried to kill me is still active. Still in power." She stood up, swaying slightly. "I need to access the ship's database. It recorded everything that happened during the attack. Names, faces, everything. But I need equipment. A computer terminal that can interface with celestial technology." Jake thought for a moment. "I might know someone who can help. But first you need food and rest. You look like you are about to fall over." "I am fine," Lyra insisted, then immediately proved herself wrong by stumbling. Jake caught her again. "You are not fine," he said. "Your body has been in stasis for 2 centuries. You need nutrients and rest. Sit down before you hurt yourself." She looked like she wanted to argue, but her legs gave out and she sat back down on the crate. "Perhaps you are right. I feel weak. Weaker than I should." Jake pulled out his communicator, a simple device that connected to the station's local network. He sent a message to Nina Garcia, one of the few people on the station he truly trusted. Nina worked in food distribution and had helped him out of tight spots before. Her reply came back quickly. "Are you crazy? Every security guard on the station is looking for you." Jake typed back carefully. "I need help. Someone is in danger. Please trust me." There was a long pause. Then Nina replied, "Where are you?" He gave her the location. "And Nina, I need food. The kind that the celestial diplomats eat. The mineral supplements." Another pause. "This is going to cost me my job, I know." "I am sorry. You owe me big time, Morrison. I will be there in an hour." Jake put the communicator away and looked at Lyra. She was watching him with those strange purple eyes, her expression unreadable. "Your friend is risking much for you, for someone she has never met." "That is what humans do," Jake said. "We help each other, even when it is not logical, even when it gets us in trouble." "My people do not think this way," Lyra said quietly. "We have hierarchies, rules, everyone has their place, and they stay in that place. Personal relationships matter less than duty to the dynasty." She looked down at her hands. "I thought this made us strong, but now I wonder if it made us blind to betrayal." They sat in silence for a while. Jake used the time to go through his tool bag, taking inventory of what he had. Not much. Some spare parts, a few power cells, his multi-tool. If they were going to survive, he needed to get creative. He pulled out a small device that looked like a broken scanner and started taking it apart. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked. "Making us a detector," Jake said, connecting wires in new patterns. "This scanner has a basic sensor array. If I route the power differently and modify the reception frequency, it should pick up security patrol signals. Give us warning when guards get close." Lyra leaned forward, watching his hands work. "You are modifying commercial equipment for military purposes. That should not be possible without specialized tools." Jake shrugged. "Most technology is more flexible than manufacturers want you to think. They lock things down to make money on upgrades and specialized versions. But if you understand the basic principles, you can make one thing do the job of another." He finished the modifications and turned the device on. It beeped and displayed a simple map of the nearby corridors. Small dots moved across the screen, representing security patrols. None were close to their location yet. "Remarkable," Lyra said. "In my time, humans were barely noticed in galactic affairs. Young species considered primitive, but you solve problems in ways we never consider. You improvise. We have to," Jake said. "We do not have the advanced technology that older species have. We cannot rely on systems that always work perfectly. So we learn to make do with what we have. Fix things with whatever is available. Think around problems instead of through them." Nina arrived exactly 1 hour later, carrying a large bag. She was a short woman with dark hair and worried eyes. When she saw Lyra, she stopped in her tracks. "Jake, who is this?" "This is the person I rescued from the ship," Jake said. "Nina, meet Princess Lyra of the Celestial Dynasty." Nina's eyes went wide. "A princess? You rescued a princess, and now every security guard on the station wants to kill you." She sat down hard on a crate. "Jake, what have you gotten yourself into?" "I did what I had to do," Jake said. "She needed help." Nina looked at Lyra, then back at Jake, then laughed. It was a slightly hysterical sound. "You know what? Fine. We are all going to get fired or arrested or both, but fine. I brought food." She opened the bag and pulled out sealed containers. "Celestial dietary supplements. Cost me 3 favors and a week's pay on the black market. They better be worth it." Lyra took one of the containers and opened it. Inside was a thick liquid that glowed faintly blue. She drank it quickly, and Jake could see color returning to her skin almost immediately. The shimmer came back, brighter than before. She drank 3 more containers before stopping. "Thank you," she said to Nina. "This debt I cannot repay easily. You have saved my life as surely as Jake did." Nina waved her hand. "Just stay alive long enough for this crazy story to have a happy ending." She looked at Jake. "What is the plan?" "You cannot hide down here forever." "I need to contact someone," Lyra said. "Someone I trust. But I need equipment to send a secure message, something that cannot be traced or intercepted." Nina thought for a moment. "There is a communication relay in the lower engineering section. It is old, mostly used for maintenance reports. Nobody pays attention to it. If you could access it without triggering alarms, you might be able to send your message." "Can you show us how to get there?" Jake asked. "I can do better than that," Nina said. She pulled out a data pad and transferred a map to Jake's device. "The maintenance tunnels connect to the engineering section through 3 different access points. This route," she highlighted a path on the map, "has the least security coverage, but you will need to move fast. Security is doing random sweeps of the lower levels." Lyra stood up, looking much stronger now. "Then we should go immediately. Every moment we delay gives our enemies more time to find us." Nina grabbed Jake's arm. "Be careful. I heard Commander Vex himself is leading the search. That Krillian does not give up once he has a target." "We will be careful," Jake promised. "Thank you, Nina, for everything." Nina hugged him quickly. "Do not get killed. I still need you to fix my apartment's air recycler." Then she left, disappearing back into the maintenance tunnels. Jake and Lyra prepared to move. He checked his modified scanner. The security patrols were moving in a predictable pattern, sweeping one section at a time. If they timed it right, they could reach the engineering section without being detected. "Ready?" he asked. Lyra nodded. She looked at him with something like respect in her eyes. "You know, in all my years, I never thought—" The engineering section was deeper in the station than Jake had ever been before. The air was hotter here, thick with the smell of machinery and recycled oxygen. Massive pipes ran along the walls, some as wide as hallways. The sound of engines hummed through everything, a constant vibration that Jake could feel in his bones. He checked his scanner again. Two security patrols were nearby but moving away from their position. The communication relay was just ahead, in a small room that jutted off from the main corridor. According to Nina's map, it should be unguarded. Most people forgot it even existed. Jake and Lyra reached the door. It was old and covered in warning signs in a dozen different languages. Jake waved his hand over the access panel. Nothing happened. The door was locked and his basic maintenance clearance was not enough to open it. "Can you open it?" Lyra asked. Jake pulled out his multi-tool. "Give me a minute." He removed the access panel's cover and looked at the wiring inside. This was older security, easier to bypass than the modern systems. He connected two wires, sending a pulse of electricity through the circuit. The door's lock clicked and it slid open. Inside, the communication relay looked like it belonged in a museum. Ancient equipment filled the small room, covered in dust and blinking with slow, lazy lights. A single terminal sat in the center, its screen cracked but functional. Jake walked over to it and tried to activate the system. Nothing happened. "It has no power," he said, tracing the power cables along the floor. "The main line has been disconnected, probably when they upgraded to newer systems." Lyra looked around the room. "Can you fix it?" "Maybe, if I can tap into another power source." Jake followed the cables to where they ended at an empty socket. The main power conduit ran through the wall, carrying electricity to more important systems. He could splice into it, but that would be dangerous. One wrong connection and he could blow the entire circuit, or worse, electrocute himself. He had no choice. They needed this relay. Jake pulled out his tools and started cutting through the wall panel. The metal was thick and stubborn, but eventually he got through to the conduit. Raw power flowed through the cables inside, enough to run an entire section of the station. He needed to be very careful. Lyra watched him work. "This is dangerous. I can see it in how carefully you move." "Everything we are doing is dangerous," Jake said. He attached a voltage regulator to reduce the power flow, then carefully connected it to the relay's power cable. "But yes, this part especially. One mistake and we have big problems." He made the final connection. Sparks flew, making them both jump back. Then the relay hummed to life. Lights turned on across the ancient equipment. The terminal screen flickered and displayed a login prompt. Jake let out a breath he had been holding. "It works," he said. "Now comes your part. I can get you access, but I do not know how to send secure messages using celestial encryption." Lyra sat down at the terminal. Her fingers moved across the keys with practiced ease, typing commands in her native language. The screen responded, showing complex patterns that meant nothing to Jake. She worked for several minutes, her face lit by the blue glow of the screen. "This system is incredibly outdated," she said while she worked. "But that might actually help us. Modern security systems are not designed to monitor technology this old. They simply ignore it." "Who are you trying to reach?" Jake asked. "General Krath. He was my father's most trusted warrior. If anyone kept faith that I might still be alive, it would be him. But I do not know if he is still alive after all this time. 200 years is a long lifespan, even for his species." She finished typing and pressed a final key. The relay's equipment hummed louder for a moment, sending the message out into space. Then everything went quiet again. Lyra sat back and closed her eyes. "Now we wait," she said. Jake's scanner beeped. He looked down at it and his heart sank. Security patrols were converging on their location. Multiple signals moving fast. Somehow they had been detected. "We have to go," he said. Now, Lyra stood up quickly. "Can we take the same route back?" Jake studied the scanner. The patrols were blocking their path. "No, we will have to find another way." He looked around the room, searching for options. There was a ventilation shaft in the ceiling, but it looked too small. Then he noticed another door at the back of the room, half hidden behind equipment. "Through there," he said, pointing. They squeezed past the old equipment and tried the door. It was unlocked, leading to a narrow service corridor. Jake had no idea where it went, but anywhere was better than staying here. They ran down the corridor as footsteps echoed behind them. The security patrols had reached the communication relay room. The corridor twisted and turned, forcing them to slow down. Jake could hear shouts behind them now. The guards had found their trail. He pushed forward, helping Lyra over pipes and around obstacles. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but he could not stop. They burst through another door and found themselves in a cargo loading area. Large containers were stacked everywhere, waiting to be loaded onto ships. Workers moved around, operating machinery and checking manifests. Most of them were human, Jake noticed. That might help them. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her behind a stack of containers. They crouched down, trying to catch their breath. Through the gaps between containers, Jake could see security guards entering the loading area. They spread out, searching methodically. Commander Vex was with them, a tall Krillian with dark armor and cold eyes. Vex spoke in his harsh language, and Jake's translator converted the words. Search every container. Check every corner. The human and his cargo are here somewhere. His cargo. They were not even mentioning that Lyra was a person. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. To them, she was just an object, something to be recovered and dealt with. He looked at Lyra and saw the same anger reflected in her purple eyes. One of the human workers, a man Jake recognized from the maintenance department, walked past their hiding spot. He saw them and stopped. For a long moment, he just stared. Jake held his breath, waiting to see what the man would do. Would he call out to the guards? Turn them in? The man looked at the guards, then back at Jake. He made a small gesture, pointing to the left. Then he walked away, moving deliberately to draw the guards' attention in the opposite direction. He started loudly complaining about a broken loader, demanding that security help him move a container. Jake understood. The man was creating a distraction, giving them a chance to escape. He squeezed Lyra's hand and they moved left, staying low behind the containers. They reached a loading dock where a cargo ship was being prepared for departure. The ship's name was painted on its side in faded letters. The Frontier Spirit. Human workers were loading cargo through the ship's main ramp. Jake made a quick decision. He pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around Lyra's shoulders, hiding her distinctive shimmer. Then he grabbed 2 cargo pads from a nearby stack and handed one to her. Pretend to work, he whispered. Just follow my lead. They walked up the ramp carrying the cargo pads, moving with the flow of workers. Nobody stopped them. Nobody even looked at them twice. They were just 2 more humans doing cargo work, beneath the notice of the important aliens who ran the station. Inside the ship, they found a quiet corner behind stacked containers and sat down. Jake's heart was pounding. They had made it, at least for now. He looked around at the ship's interior. It was old but well-maintained, with the worn look of a vessel that had seen many years of hard use. What now? Lyra asked. Before Jake could answer, a voice spoke from above them. What now is that you 2 explain why you are hiding on my ship. Jake looked up to see a man standing on a cargo platform above them. He was in his 50s with gray hair and weathered skin. His clothes were simple but practical, the kind worn by people who worked with their hands. This must be the ship's captain, Captain Webb, Jake asked. The man nodded. That is me, and you are Jake Morrison, the most wanted man on this station right now. I saw your picture on every security screen between here and the docking bay. He looked at Lyra. And I'm guessing your friend is the reason every guard on Caraxes 7 is searching cargo. Holds. Jake stood up slowly, his hands visible and empty. We need help. Someone is trying to kill her. She is not safe on this station. Webb climbed down from the platform and walked closer. He studied Lyra carefully. Celestial dynasty, unless I miss my guess. And young, which means she is important. Princess? Noble of some kind? Lyra pulled back Jake's jacket, letting her shimmer show. I am Princess Lyra of the 7th House. I was in stasis for 200 years. This man saved my life. Now people who tried to kill me once are trying again. Webb let out a low whistle. 200 years. That is some story. He was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then he sighed. I must be getting old. 10 years ago, I would have turned you both in without a second thought. But I have seen too much corruption in my life. Too many powerful people doing wrong things and getting away with it. He looked at Jake. You risked everything to help someone in trouble. That counts for something. So you will help us? Jake asked. I will get you off this station, Webb said. After that, you are on your own. I have cargo runs to make and a crew to pay, but I can give you a few days to figure out your next move. He pointed to a hatch in the floor. 3 days passed before Captain Webb opened the hatch and told them it was safe to come out. The Frontier Spirit was far from Caraxes 7 now, traveling through empty space between star systems. Jake climbed out of the storage hold first, his muscles stiff from sitting in the cramped space. He helped Lyra up and they both blinked in the bright lights of the cargo bay. Webb led them to the crew quarters, a simple room with bunks and a small table. You can stay here, he said. My crew knows you are aboard. They will not cause trouble, but they are curious. Try to keep a low profile anyway. Have you heard anything from the station? Jake asked. Webb nodded. The official story is that you stole valuable artifacts from a historical ship and fled. They are offering a reward for information leading to your capture. But I also heard something else through the underground channels. Someone high up in the Celestial Dynasty is very interested in finding a certain piece of cargo that went missing. Lyra's expression hardened. So my uncle knows I am alive. He must be terrified. 200 years building his power, and now I return to threaten everything. Your uncle? Jake asked. Prince Velor. My father's brother. He was always ambitious, always jealous of my father's position. When I disappeared, he must have taken advantage of the chaos. Lyra sat down heavily on one of the bunks. I need to access the ship's database, the one from my vessel. It recorded everything during the attack. Names, faces, communications, everything I need to prove what he did. The ship is still on the station, Webb said. Locked down tight now. You will never get back to it. The data might still be accessible remotely, Lyra said. Celestial Dynasty ships have backup systems. If I can establish a quantum link, I might be able to download the information. But I need specialized equipment. Webb scratched his chin. I might know someone who deals in that kind of technology, but it will not be cheap, and we will need to stop at a trading post. Are you sure you want to risk it? Before Lyra could answer, a beeping sound came from Jake's wrist device. He looked down at it and saw a message notification. The signal was weak, but it was there. Someone had responded to Lyra's communication from the relay. Lyra, Jake said, you have a response. She jumped up and grabbed his wrist, reading the message. Her eyes widened, and for the first time since Jake met her, she smiled. A real smile that lit up her whole face. It is Krath. General Krath. He is alive. He never stopped looking for me. She read the message aloud. Princess Lyra, I have waited 2 centuries to see this message. I never believed you were truly gone. I have maintained a network of loyal warriors waiting for your return. But we must be careful. Emperor Velor has spies everywhere. I am sending coordinates for a safe meeting point. Trust only the human who helped you. Humans are the one variable Velor cannot predict. General Krath. Jake felt a strange pride at those words. Humans were unpredictable. To the organized, hierarchical aliens, that was a weakness. But sometimes unpredictability was exactly what you needed. Where are the coordinates? Webb asked. Lyra showed him the location data. Webb whistled low. The neutral outpost. That is deep in independent space. No government control, no law except what you make yourself. It will take us a week to get there. Can you take us? Lyra asked. Webb thought for a long moment. It is out of my way. Will cost me cargo contracts. But yes, I will take you. Something about this whole situation feels bigger than a simple smuggling job. Like I am watching history happen. He stood up. Get some rest. Both of you look like you have not slept in days. We will be in hyperspace for a while, might as well be comfortable. After Webb left, Jake and Lyra sat in silence. The weight of everything that had happened was finally catching up to them. Jake felt exhausted, but his mind would not stop racing. He kept thinking about the temporal administrator, the ancient AI that sent him to the wrong bay, or the right bay, depending on how you looked at it. Do you think it was planned? He asked Lyra. The AI sending me to your ship. General Krath saying humans are unpredictable. It feels like something bigger is happening. Lyra nodded slowly. I have been thinking the same thing. The temporal administrator is old. Very old. It came from the Chronos civilization, a species that existed before most current galactic powers. They understood time differently than we do, saw patterns and connections across centuries. She looked at Jake. What if the AI knew? What if it saw that I needed to be found at exactly this moment, by exactly you? But why me? I am just a technician. Maybe that is exactly why, Lyra said. You are not bound by protocol, not afraid to break rules when it matters. You help people because it is right, not because someone ordered you to. Those qualities are rare in the galaxy. My people have forgotten how to think that way. We became so focused on tradition and hierarchy that we lost our ability to adapt. Over the next few days, Jake and Lyra fell into a routine. The crew of the Frontier Spirit was small. Just Captain Webb, an engineer named Carlos, and a pilot named Helen. All human, Jake noticed. Webb explained that mixed species crews often had problems. Different physiologies, different sleep cycles, different ideas about how things should work. All human crews were simpler. Jake spent his time helping Carlos in the engine room. The Frontier Spirit was old, and something always needed fixing. It felt good to work with his hands again to solve simple mechanical problems instead of thinking about galactic conspiracies. Carlos was quiet but skilled, and they developed an easy working relationship. Lyra spent her time in the ship's small library, reading about everything that had happened in the galaxy during her 200 years of sleep. The changes were massive. Old alliances had fallen. New powers had risen. The Celestial Dynasty had retreated from galactic affairs, becoming isolated and mysterious. And humanity had emerged as a new player, young and ambitious. In the evenings, they would sit together in the crew quarters and talk. Jake told her about Earth, about growing up in a city where buildings touched the sky, about the moment he decided to leave home and work in space, about the loneliness of being one human among thousands of aliens. Lyra told him about her world, a planet of floating cities among the clouds of a gas giant, about growing up in the royal palace, learning diplomacy and statecraft, about the weight of duty and expectation, about the night her ship was attacked and everything changed forever. "I was young," she said one night, "only 20 years old in your reckoning. I thought I understood the galaxy, thought I knew how power worked. But I was naive. I did not see the betrayal coming until it was too late." "You survived," Jake said. "That is what matters. I survived because my guards died protecting me. Because they had seconds to make a decision and they chose to save me instead of themselves." Lyra's voice was quiet. Their names were Soren and Lith. "Brothers. They served my family for generations. When the attackers breached the ship, they put me in the stasis pod and held the door. I heard them fighting as the pod activated. I heard them die." Jake did not know what to say. What words could comfort someone who lost everything? He just sat with her, letting her talk, letting her remember. On the 5th day, something strange happened. Jake was working in the engine room when all the ship's systems flickered. Lights dimmed for a second. The engines missed a beat. Then everything returned to normal. Carlos looked worried. "That should not happen," Carlos said. "Not in hyperspace. Power fluctuations like that can be dangerous." They ran diagnostics but found nothing wrong. The systems were all functioning perfectly. Jake had a strange feeling, though. He went to find Captain Webb on the bridge. "Did you see that power fluctuation?" he asked. Webb nodded. "I saw it, but look at this." He pointed to the navigation screen. "Our course changed. Just slightly. We are still heading to the same destination, but by a different route, one that takes us past fewer inhabited systems." "The ship changed course on its own?" Jake asked. "Not the ship," Webb said slowly. "Something in the ship's computer made the change. Something with access codes I have never seen before." He looked at Jake. "I think your AI friend from the station is still helping you." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The temporal administrator could reach across space, affecting systems on other ships. How powerful was this ancient intelligence, and what did it really want? That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about the AI and its mysterious purposes. Around midnight, he got up and went to the ship's communication terminal. He typed a simple message addressed to Caraxis 7, to the temporal administrator itself. "Why me? Why did you choose me to find her?" He did not expect a response. But a few minutes later, text appeared on the screen. "Humanity brings chaos to order. Disrupts patterns grown stagnant. Galaxy requires change. Princess requires champion without ties to old powers. You were optimal choice. Continue path. Timeline requires correction. Jake stared at the words. The AI talked about timelines and corrections like it could see the future, like everything happening was part of some vast plan. It should have been terrifying. Instead, Jake felt a strange sense of purpose. Maybe he was meant to find Lyra. Maybe this was his role in something larger than himself. He typed back. What happens next? The response came quickly. You help Princess reclaim throne, expose conspiracy, change balance of galactic power. Humanity rises to proper. The neutral outpost was loud and crowded. Aliens of every species pushed through the narrow corridors, shouting in dozens of languages. The smell was overwhelming, a mix of different atmospheres and body chemistries. Jake kept one hand on his tool bag and the other near Lyra, making sure they did not get separated. Captain Webb led them to a quieter section near the station's core. Here the corridors were wider and cleaner. This was where the more legitimate business happened, where traders met to make deals worth millions of credits. Webb stopped at a door marked with symbols Jake did not recognize. This is where Krath said to meet, Webb said. You want me to come in with you? Lyra shook her head. Thank you, Captain. But this is something I must do myself. You have already done more than enough. Webb nodded and stepped back. Jake and Lyra approached the door. It slid open before they could knock. Inside was a large room furnished with chairs and tables designed for many different species. Standing in the center was the biggest alien Jake had ever seen. General Krath was from the Dracon species, warriors known throughout the galaxy for their strength and honor. He stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in scales that shimmered like dark metal. His eyes were yellow with vertical slits, and when he saw Lyra, they filled with something that looked like tears. Princess, he said, his voice deep and rough. He dropped to one knee, a gesture of respect that looked strange coming from such a massive creature. I thought I would die before seeing this day. 200 years I have waited. 200 years of searching and hoping. Lyra rushed forward and touched his arm. Stand up, old friend. You do not need to kneel to me, not after everything you have done. Krath stood slowly, towering over both of them. He looked at Jake with curiosity. And you are the human who saved her. Jake Morrison. I have heard much about you in the past week. The galaxy is full of stories about a human technician who stole a princess from a space station. I did not steal her, Jake said. I helped her escape people who wanted to kill her. Krath's mouth pulled back in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. I also know about your species. Humans are young in galactic terms, but you are fighters, survivors. You do not give up even when you should. These are qualities I respect. He gestured for them to sit. They gathered around a table and Krath pulled out a datapad covered in files and images. I must tell you what happened after you disappeared, Princess. The galaxy changed greatly. Your father, Emperor Thane, searched for you for 10 years. He never believed you were dead. But eventually the pressure from the court grew too strong. Your uncle Velor convinced the council that continuing the search was weakening the dynasty. My father agreed to stop searching? Lyra's voice was pained. He had no choice. Velor had built alliances with powerful houses. He threatened civil war if the emperor did not accept your death and name a new heir. Krath's claws scraped against the table. Your father named Velor as heir, but with conditions. Velor could not take the throne while your father lived. He would wait. How long did my father live? Lyra asked quietly. 50 more years. He ruled well, but his heart was broken. When he died, Velor took the throne. That was 150 years ago. Krath showed them images on his datapad. Velor has ruled since then, growing more powerful and more isolated. The dynasty has withdrawn from galactic affairs. We trade less. We share less knowledge. We have become secretive and suspicious. Jake studied the images. Emperor Velor looked like Lyra, but older and harder. His expression in the official portraits was cold and calculating. This was not someone who would give up power easily. There is more, Krath said. Velor has made secret alliances. With the Krillian Dominion especially. They have military bases in celestial space now, supposedly for protection, but I believe it is about control. Velor uses Krillian force to maintain his power. Commander Vex, Jake said suddenly. The security chief on Caraxes 7, he was Krillian. He was watching the bay where Lyra's ship was kept. Krath nodded grimly. That confirms my suspicions. Velor knew where your ship was hidden. He kept guards watching it for 200 years, waiting to see if anyone found you. The moment you were discovered, He mobilized his forces. Then the conspiracy is not just about succession, Lyra said. It is about the entire future of the dynasty. Velor and his Krillian allies want to maintain their control. Exactly, which is why I have been gathering loyal forces in secret. Warriors and nobles who remember your father, who remember what the dynasty was before Velor's isolation. Krath brought up more files. We have ships, resources, but we need more than military power. We need legitimacy. We need you. Lyra stood and walked to the window. Outside, ships came and went from the station, thousands of lives moving through space. I have been thinking about this for days, about what to do. Traditional approaches would take years. Building alliances, gathering support, following proper procedures. She turned back to face them. But Jake has taught me something. Sometimes you need to break the rules.
Act quickly.
To the unexpected thing. What are you suggesting? Krath asked. I want to broadcast my story to the entire galaxy. Tell everyone what happened. Show my face. Prove I am alive. Expose Velor's conspiracy in one moment before he can react. Krath looked shocked. Princess, that would be extremely dangerous. Every assassin in the galaxy would know where you are. Velor would send everything he has to silence you. I know, Lyra said, but it is also bold and direct. It gives Velor no time to prepare. No time to spin the story his way. Just the truth shown to everyone at once. Jake understood what she was doing. She was thinking like a human now. Not carefully planning every move, but taking a calculated risk. Acting on instinct and courage. I think it is a good plan, he said. But we need access to a major communication hub. Something powerful enough to reach the entire galaxy. Krath thought for a long moment. Then he sighed, a sound like steam escaping. The only hub within reach that has that kind of power is back on Caraxis 7, the station you just escaped from. Then we go back, Lyra said simply. That is insane, Krath said. The station is on high alert. Security is everywhere. They are specifically looking for you. Which is exactly why they would not expect us to return, Jake said. He was starting to see the logic of it. They think we are running away, trying to get as far from them as possible. Going back is the last thing they would predict. Krath looked between them, then laughed. It was a strange sound, like rocks grinding together. You two have spent too much time together. You are both thinking like humans now, taking impossible risks and calling them plans. His expression turned serious. But you are right. It might work. And I have warriors on that station, members of the cleaning crews, the maintenance staff, species that others ignore just like humans. Can they help us? Lyra asked. They can create diversions, cause problems in the right places, make security look the wrong way. Krath activated his communication device. I will send messages now. Coordinate our forces, but we must move quickly. Every day we wait gives Velor more time to prepare. Over the next few hours, they planned the operation. Krath had a small fleet of ships loyal to him, warriors who had waited decades for this moment. They would approach Caraxis 7 from different directions, pretending to be normal traders and travelers. Once in position, they would launch coordinated attacks on the station's military sections, drawing security forces away from the communication hub. Meanwhile, Jake and Lyra would use the same method that worked before, hide among the human workers, move through the maintenance tunnels. Reach the communication hub and broadcast Lyra's message before anyone could stop them. It is a thin plan, Krath admitted. Many things can go wrong, but sometimes the simplest approach is best, and you have something that Velor does not expect. He looked at Jake. You have human unpredictability. You solve problems in ways that make no sense to others. That may be enough. They prepared to leave. Captain Webb agreed to take them back to Caraxis 7, though he made Jake promise to fix every broken system on his ship when this was over. You are costing me a fortune in lost business, Webb said. But I want to see how this story ends. The night before they left, Jake could not sleep again. He went to the observation deck and stared out at the stars. So many worlds out there, so many lives. And somehow he had become part of something that would affect all of them. Lyra joined him after a while. They stood together in silence, watching a distant nebula glow purple and blue. Are you scared? She asked. Yes, Jake said honestly. I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. About what happens if we fail. I am scared too, Lyra admitted. I have been scared since I woke up. Scared of a galaxy I do not understand anymore. Scared of facing my uncle. Scared of failing everyone who believed in me. She looked at him. But I'm also grateful. Without you, I would still be dying in that stasis pod, or I would have been captured and killed. You gave me a chance to fight back. That is worth any risk. Jake thought about that, about the choice he made to help her, about all the choices since then. Breaking into the ship, hiding her from security, running from the station. All of it went against his training, against the rules he was supposed to follow. But none of it felt wrong. It felt right. Lyra's hands moved faster across the controls. Screen after screen lit up as she accessed the communication systems. Jake watched the door, his modified scanner in hand. Security patrols were moving through the station, but none were heading their way yet. Outside, Krath's forces should be launching their attack any moment now. How long until you can broadcast? Jake asked. 2 minutes, Lyra said. The system requires authorization codes from royal blood. I am using my genetic signature to override the security. She typed a final command and the screens changed color. Ready? When I activate this, every screen in the galaxy that can receive signals will show my message. It will reach billions of people across thousands of worlds. An explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered and alarms began blaring. Krath's attack had started. Jake's scanner lit up with dozens of security signals, all moving toward the military sectors. The diversion was working. Do it, Jake said. Now, while they are distracted. Lyra pressed the activation key. Every screen in the communication hub showed her face. And somewhere far away, on countless worlds, people stopped what they were doing and stared at their screens. A princess who had been dead for 200 years was speaking to them. My name is Princess Lyra of the 7th House, daughter of Emperor Thane of the Celestial Dynasty, she said. Her voice was clear and strong. 200 years ago, I was declared dead. But I was not dead. I was betrayed by members of my own family who wanted power. They attacked my ship and left me for dead in a stasis pod, hidden away and forgotten. She told the whole story. The attack, waking up 2 centuries later, Jake finding her and helping her escape. The conspiracy that stretched across decades and involved the current emperor. She showed evidence that Krath had gathered, documents and communications that proved Velor's guilt. I am the rightful heir to the celestial throne, Lyra continued. And I will reclaim what was stolen from me and from my people. But I cannot do it alone. I need those who remember what the dynasty once was, who remember honor and justice. Stand with me. Help me restore our civilization to its former glory. Then she did something that shocked Jake. She turned the camera toward him. This is Jake Morrison, a human technician who saved my life. He risked everything to help someone he did not know. This is what humanity represents. Courage, compassion, the willingness to do what is right, even at great personal cost. She looked directly into the camera. For too long, the galaxy has viewed humans as junior partners, as primitives barely worthy of notice. But humans possess qualities we older species have lost. They adapt. They improvise. They help each other. I call on the galaxy to recognize humanity as our equals, to learn from them as I have learned. The broadcast ended. Lyra closed the channel and sat back, exhausted. It is done. Now the whole galaxy knows. Jake's scanner erupted with signals. Security forces were converging on their position. Commander Vex was leading them personally. They had minutes, maybe less, before the door was breached. They are coming, Jake said. We need to get out of here. But Lyra shook her head. There is no way out. They will have this section surrounded. She stood and faced the door. I will surrender. Tell them who I am. They cannot kill me now. The whole galaxy knows I'm alive. They can still arrest you, hold you prisoner, keep you from claiming the throne. Maybe, but at least I tried. Lyra smiled at him. Thank you, Jake, for everything. You showed me what it means to truly live, not just to exist within rules and traditions, but to act, to choose, to be brave. Heavy footsteps approached the door. Commander Vex's harsh voice called out, "Open this door immediately. You are both under arrest for terrorism and sedition." Jake looked at Lyra, then at the door. He thought about giving up, about surrendering, but something inside him refused. They had come too far, done too much. He was not going to let it end like this. He pulled out his multi-tool and went to the communication terminal. "What are you doing?" Lyra asked. "Something unpredictable," Jake said. He started typing, accessing the station's systems. Not the communication systems this time, but the environmental controls. the same systems the temporal administrator used to help them before. He created a massive power surge in this section of the station. Not enough to hurt anyone, but enough to overload every system. Lights, doors, elevators, everything. Then he grabbed Lyra's hand. When the power goes out, we run. The maintenance tunnels will be dark, but I know them by memory. Trust me, the power surge hit. Every light in the section went dark. Emergency systems tried to activate, but Jake had overloaded those too. They had maybe 30 seconds before backup power kicked in. He pulled Lyra toward a maintenance hatch he had spotted earlier, hidden behind equipment. They squeezed through just as the door to the communication hub exploded inward. Commander Vex and his soldiers rushed in, but Jake and Lyra were already gone, moving through the darkness of the maintenance tunnels. Jake used his flashlight to navigate, leading them through passages he had traveled hundreds of times. Behind them he could hear soldiers trying to follow, but they did not know these tunnels. They stumbled and cursed in the darkness while Jake and Lyra moved quickly and quietly. They reached the docking bay where the Frontier Spirit waited. Captain Webb was already preparing the ship for departure. Krath's forces had withdrawn, their mission accomplished. Now it was time to get out before the station's defenses reorganized. They ran up the ramp and the ship lifted off immediately. Security tried to close the docking bay doors, but the power surge had disabled the controls. The Frontier Spirit shot out into space, accelerating hard. Pursuit ships tried to follow, but Krath's fleet was waiting. They engaged the station's forces, giving the Frontier Spirit time to escape. As they jumped into hyperspace, Jake finally allowed himself to breathe. They had done it. Against all odds, they had broadcast Lyra's message and escaped. Now the galaxy knew the truth. Over the next few days, the reaction was overwhelming. Lyra's broadcast had been seen by billions. The evidence she showed was undeniable. Emperor Velor could not simply dismiss her claims. Across the Celestial Dynasty, people began to question their ruler. Old noble houses that had been loyal to Velor started to waver. Some openly declared support for Lyra. The Krillian Dominion tried to support Velor, but their own people were outraged when they learned about the conspiracy. Krillian warriors valued honor above all else. Learning that their leaders had helped assassinate a princess damaged their reputation across the galaxy. The alliance between Velor and the Krillians began to crumble. General Krath reported that loyalist forces were growing stronger every day. Noble houses were pledging their support to Lyra. Even some of Velor's own guards were defecting, unwilling to serve someone who had committed such treachery. Within a week, civil war erupted in the Celestial Dynasty, but it was not the long, bloody conflict that everyone feared. Velor's support melted away quickly once people knew the truth. He tried to flee but was captured by his own military commanders. They brought him before a council of noble houses and formally removed him from power. 6 months after Jake first opened that stasis pod, Princess Lyra stood before the Grand Council and was crowned Empress of the Celestial Dynasty. She was the youngest Empress in history, but also the most popular. People across the dynasty celebrated her return and the end of Velor's corrupt rule. Jake was there for the ceremony, dressed in formal clothes that felt strange after months of wearing work coveralls. He stood with Captain Webb, Nina Garcia, and other humans who had helped them. Lyra had insisted they be present, honored guests at the coronation. After the ceremony, Lyra found Jake in the crowd. She was wearing the royal robes now, her shimmer brighter than ever, but her smile was the same. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know you do not like formal events." "I would not miss it," Jake said. "You did it. You took back your throne." "We did it," Lyra corrected. "I could not have done any of this without you. Which is why I want you to stay. Be my advisor. Help me rebuild the dynasty and restore our connections with the galaxy." Jake was surprised. "I'm just a technician. I do not know anything about running an empire. That is exactly why I need you. Everyone else around me has been trained in tradition and protocol. They think in old patterns, but you think differently. You solve problems in ways no one else considers. That is what the dynasty needs now. Fresh perspectives. Human perspectives." Jake thought about it. Going back to his old life seemed impossible now. He had been part of something larger than himself, something important. And Lyra was right. The dynasty needed change. Maybe he could help with that. "Okay," he said. "I will stay. But I am still going to fix things. That is what I do best," Lyra laughed. "Good. The palace systems are hundreds of years old and constantly breaking down. I am sure you will find plenty to keep you busy." Over the following months, Empress Lyra made sweeping changes to the dynasty. She opened trade agreements with other civilizations, shared technology that had been kept secret for centuries. Most importantly, she elevated humanity's status in galactic affairs. She sponsored human colonies and pushed for human representation in the Galactic Federation. Other species protested at first. Humanity was too young, they said. Too